Hello again, Salem. This is Bill from Salem Digest here at the Salem Access Television Studios on Derby Street, and we are continuing our series of Salem Election 2021 candidate interviews. And right now we have Ward 7 Councillor Steve Dibble, who is running for the mayor's seat, the corner office this year. And Steve, welcome to SATV. Nice to see you.
Bill, it's really good to see you. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to jump right into the questions. We don't have a lot of time to do this. So, Steve, you served on the city council for a few years now, and you've been outspoken on the council floor, quite oftentimes in opposition to administration plans. Even though you may have ended up voting in favor in the end of some of those plans, there was a lot of discussion where changes were made that you wanted to be made. What drives this, and why have you decided to run for mayor of Salem?
Those are great questions. Thank you. I don't vote against the mayor. I don't vote against Kim Driscoll. I don't vote against the administration. In fact, the majority of what Kim has put forward, I've voted in support of. But when there's something that I disagree with, I typically ask some questions, usually before the meeting happens, try to find some common ground or try to understand the issue better, or try to make some changes to it. But right now, and I notice, you cannot even ask questions about things that the mayor is putting forward. It's basically her way or the highway. And that's not the way it was for many years. I worked for Mayor Salvo, Mayor Harrington, Mayor Yusevich for a combined 14 years, from 1986 to the year 2000. And they surrounded themselves with good people and they allowed them to do their jobs. And it's different what's happening now. You're seeing the mayor micromanage a lot of department heads. You have good people at City Hall that are leaving. I just saw one staff member at the planning department get off the train, and I was greeting people with a sign last week. And I said, I'm looking forward to working with you next year. He's a very good planner, a lot of brilliant ideas. And he said, Steve, I would love to work for you, but I gave my notice yesterday. So one more city employee is leaving. It's like in the school department. We've lost 21 principals in the last 2.5 to 3 years in only 8 schools. How is that even possible? Bill, there's a lot going on in Salem, and the direction that we're taking, my way or the highway, with Kim Driscoll as 16 years as mayor, her need for power has just gotten way too strong. And she's no longer listening to Salem residents, not really working on behalf of Salem residents. She's listening to a lot of people in Boston, big money developers coming in here building luxury apartments. So I deviated from your question a little bit, but we're talking about a lot of things here today.
Well, there's no deviation from the question. You've led into another question we're going to get to eventually. Yeah. But so you feel that basically there's too much strength coming out of the mayor's office right now, and not enough compromise? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. The need for her to control everything is absorbing her. She has control of the city council, the school committee, even the housing, the state-run Salem Housing Authority. She had the governor put herself on the board so she can make big changes there too. She's controlling just about everything in Salem. If you're a volunteer on a city board or commission and you speak against something that she wants, she usually has you replaced. The next term, you're gone.
So you brought up the school committee. Now, by city ordinance and by the city charter, written in 1914, more than 100 years ago, the mayor is the chairman of the school committee. But over the years, various mayors have handled that position differently. Some have just been there basically as a tie-breaking vote, may participate in the discussion, but they don't necessarily drive the discussion. Do you feel that there's too much control by the mayor on the school committee, and maybe she should let that elected body do what it's elected to do?
I think so. I really think so. I think the mayor has enough to do across the city without micromanaging every single thing across the board. But it's not the chairman anymore, Bill. It's chairperson.
Well, I'm an old guy.
A lot of words have come and gone, and I got slipped up in a word that I used for a long time, for many decades. And I apologize for that a while ago, but that's a whole nother story. Well, that was pertaining to about my brother, and that's a different story.
I'll try to keep the chairperson thought in mind.
Well, when you're talking about votes, things that I voted against, the ADUs, accessory dwelling units, That was a practice that, well, I'll back up. City Councilor Elaine Milo and I met with seniors from the Council on Aging, and we wrote the existing in-law apartment, which was a good law to help loved ones help their family members, whether it be a grandson, a grandparent, or nephew, it didn't matter, any type of family member. And that was a good thing for Salem, where it protected the value of single-family neighborhoods. It didn't allow them to become two families and having unrelated people living in the same house. And that law passed unanimously on the City Council. That was a good thing. We had over 200 come to a public hearing that I chaired and spoke and relayed a lot of concerns about protecting our single-family neighborhoods, that we can't open it up to anybody living in each one. So we crafted a very good ordinance, and it passed. That was about 5 years ago, I'd say. That was right after you stepped down on the City Council. Well, 3 years after you stepped down, I think it was. And that was a good ordinance. That should have been in place decades ago. We had some illegal apartments happening, but now they became legal, and that's a good thing. Then the ADU came along, and I thought this was a bad thing because it's the exact opposite to what the 200 people were speaking about. How you can't turn single-family neighborhoods into two-family neighborhoods, and then turn 2, 3, and 4 family units and add another unit into those, overcrowd the city even more. So I voted against that, and that came, the mayor wouldn't give in. It came back before us a second time, and it was about to be voted down, and then it came back a third time, and the rules had changed, and I still voted against it. I thought it was a bad practice. So ADUs, 3 times it came back before us. It's kind of like the carnival in the Salem Common, where it came to us 4 or 5 times. I think it was 4 times, where the mayor wanted the carnival at Halloween over and over again. Not just a little kiddie carnival that we don't call a carnival, but a big carnival. She kept coming back over and over again. She had to get her way. And this is not the same Kim Driscoll that I was friends with 35 years ago. She came to my wedding 32 years ago, and my wife and I went to her wedding maybe 28, 29 years ago, I forget. But I worked really hard to get Kim Driscoll elected 16 years ago. And I feel as though she's really stopped listening, as I said earlier. 8 or 10 years ago, she just started kind of bulldozing and doing her own thing, her own, without compromise. You can't even ask a question. As a city councilor, there's supposed to be some checks and balances. You know how this works, Bill. There's supposed to be some checks and balances here, but right now it's so out of whack that if you oppose what the mayor is asking, you're considered an obstructionist. And if you ask a question, she gets so mad, her face turns purple, and she's really upset, and she doesn't even welcome to be questioned at all. Now, if you take a plan and you say, hey, Mayor, how about if we look at it this way? Or we change it, and we instead of red, we change it to a little bit of blue color, or whatever the issue is, you can't even make a suggestion about anything. It's her way or the highway. And that's not the way she was 16 years ago. Somewhere along the line, she developed this need for power and total control over everything. And that's part of the reason why I'm running for mayor. Not just because the way Kim Driscoll's acting, my friend Kim Driscoll, it's also some of her policies, the way she's ramming things through. Luxury apartments all over the city. The mayor keeps talking about that there's a housing crisis in Salem. Yes, there is. We need senior housing, and we need truly affordable housing, and we need higher paying job industries. We need to protect the businesses that we have now, and then recruit some better businesses to come into Salem, light manufacturing or research and other higher paying jobs, clean industry. Instead of taking our zoning, instead of changing the zoning on business properties all around the city and switching them to luxury apartments, we should be having these businesses come in here so we have better paying jobs, but these businesses pay a tremendous amount of tax. And that will, just like what Peabody does and other cities and towns do, they recruit businesses that it helps keep our rents and keeps the property taxes down. Thereby the rents will be kept down as well. So the cost of living will be kept down. So the more businesses we have, the lower our housing cost is. But if we just keep building luxury apartments, our rents and our tax bill on our houses will all go up. Because every $1 that we take in taxes, the state says we spend $1.78 in taxes. So financially speaking, only financially speaking, building housing is a losing proposition financially for cities and towns. We need to have a balance, and we don't have a balance. We are turning our business properties all around the city into luxury apartments. We just built 2,300 units, Bill, in the last, less than 2 years now. And we have a couple thousand under construction or in the permitting process as well. behind Shaw's Supermarkets, 212 units there that are about to open. That's not in the 2,300 that are already built. So all those units and all those people, the lion's share of them, probably 99% or so, some high number, did not come from Salem that moved into these luxury apartments. They're expensive, $3,000, $3,200 a month rent. Charging so much is causing other landlords throughout the whole city to raise their rents. A landlord on Cabot Street raised his rent overnight on one family $700. Went from $1,200 to $1,900. And he said, I can get this. I'm still way cheaper than these luxury apartments, and I have a better backyard, a better neighborhood, parking spaces, on and on. He has some amenities in this place. Whereas some of these tall buildings, you have really no amenities. You have to get in your car to go anywhere. It's not a neighborhood you can walk around. My wife is a nurse at Salem Hospital. One of her coworkers had her rent raised $1,000 overnight. And she's contemplating moving out of Salem because it's just too expensive here. So these luxury apartments are affecting Salem in so many negative ways. There's a housing crisis in Salem, but the luxury apartments that the mayor keeps pushing all around the city is not helping Salem. In fact, the mayor wants to build, I think it's 7,000 to 10,000 more luxury apartments in Salem. She's proposing to raise the population of Salem, which has been about 38 to 41,000 people for a long time. Now we're up getting close to probably 45,000. We'll wait to see where the next...
Just over 44, according to the latest state report.
Yes, but we're building more and more luxury apartments, so that number keeps going up and up. You can see it on our streets with the amount of traffic that we're having. You can see it in the number of water breaks. We're putting so much water pressure in the pipes to service these thousands of additional units that we're having water breaks. We usually just have a couple of water breaks during the whole year, mostly at the end of the winter when things are freezing and thawing back and forth. So in the end of February, March, and April, we have a lot of water breaks. But now, 4th of July, we're having a couple in June, a couple in May. We're having water breaks at a lot of water breaks at an odd time of year. And Bill, these water breaks are not inexpensive. $17,000 to $32,000 has been each of the water breaks in the last few months.
I would be interested in seeing, just to give you a little break here for a second, let you catch your breath.
Yeah.
I would actually be interested in seeing actual data going back 25 years on these water breaks. I hear a lot of talk about the water breaks, why they're happening, why they're not happening, what's causing them, what's not causing them. I would really like to see the data.
Yeah.
Say go back 25 years on how many water breaks that we've had annually each year, when they've occurred, and maybe why they've occurred. But I don't know that we've ever actually seen those numbers. It would be interesting to see.
One more number we need to throw in there is the cost of these repairs.
Well, that would be part of the data.
We've never had such gigantic cost to repair each of these.
Well, everything costs more nowadays, but again, that would be part of the data.
We're using less city crews to make these repairs. We're outsourcing it to privatizing it over and over again. This mayor has privatized so much that it's costing us in services. It's not the same service as our city employees were doing. So it's frustrating for our teachers, the city hall workers, the guys who cut the grass, the police department, fire department, on and on. There's a lot of city employees that are very frustrated with Kim Driscoll across the board. Not just department heads, all the way down to all workers, it seems. So privatizing most of the cemeteries are now cut by private contractors. And a lot of headstones are being damaged and being whacked because these guys come in, come out, they're not necessarily here from Salem. And our workers cared about the loved ones that are in these cemeteries. So the grass in a lot of places are not being cut on time. A woman tried to have a softball game. She's running a softball tournament. You had teams from Beverly, Peabody, Danvers, and et cetera coming to this tournament. And the grass is 2 foot tall, June 6th. On the softball field, and the bike trail, the grass was 2.5 foot tall. I've had to call 5 out of the last 6 years to get the bike path grass cut. It's being done by a private contractor. When the city was doing it, it was done regularly. The private contractor, we're paying them a lot of money, and they're not doing the work. So can we do better, Bill? Absolutely.
All right. So we went off on a little sidebar there, but that was a good one. You've touched a lot on housing and growth. So we're going to bring it right into question 3, which is housing growth and development are buzzwords these days. Huge buzzwords being used by people on both sides of the political divide, no matter how you want to define that. And that's not just at the city level, that's at the state and the federal level. Do you have any ideas, do you have any plans to address or mitigate these issues in Salem? And do those plans include working with neighboring communities? Because housing is not just a Salem issue. It's a Peabody issue, it's a Beverly issue, it's a Swampscott Marblehead issue. do you see any future in working with neighboring communities to spread the wealth, so to speak, on providing this housing?
Yeah, I have a strong reputation of working with everybody, bringing people together and getting things done together. Whether it's building a playground, I've built hundreds and hundreds of playgrounds through my company. Not just playgrounds, just bringing people together, like I did with Mayor Salvo, Mayor Harrington, and Mayor Yusevich. I brought city departments together and we got things done in different ways. We were talking about overdeveloping the city, and I want to close on this. Some of the things that we're doing are just hurting Salem. We're not doing things to help Salem residents. For example, the other issue that I voted against, because I voted against something, or voted against two things, the mayor calls me an obstructionist. Well, just remember, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, they were considered obstructionists as well. And I'm not hanging my hat on them. That'd be uncalled for, but obstructionist sometimes is needed. When things are just happening that are happening to help developers from out of Salem, to help big people in Boston, we should be, the mayor and the city council should be working for the people of Salem. So the MROD, Municipal and Religious Overlay District, that's something I voted against the first time it came around, and I went to all the meetings. There was one meeting, giant one, that had 75 people there. I was the only elected official there. It was an open meeting, not a city council meeting. And the original wording of that thing had, you could build another building on the same property as tall as the tallest building on the same property. That's the exact wording that was in there. Pretty close to what it said.
I recall that, yes.
Yep. And what that means is, these are some old Catholic church buildings mostly, and a couple of municipal buildings we were looking at. But like at Immaculate Conception Church, where I was married down on Hawthorne Boulevard, I was married there 30, I'm showing my age, 30-something, 32 years ago. So the other buildings could be built as tall as the top of the steeple, maybe 17 stories tall.
That's the tallest remaining steeple in Salem, I believe.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. And over at St. James, the steeple's long gone, but the chimneys are pretty tall. I don't know, what, 7, 8, 9 stories? That's not really fair to the small historic houses that are 1.5 stories tall or 2 stories tall that are beside it and behind it. That's just not fair at all. So you can build something that's 17 stories on this property, but the next property is limited to 2.5 stories. That's not zoning. That's not good zoning. Zoning should be kind of uniform on the whole area. Zoning is a way of protecting our neighborhoods. So we shouldn't be randomly changing our zoning from business properties to multifamily luxury apartments. So yes, I oppose some things because my undergraduate degree, I don't know if you know this, Bill, is in city planning. I studied geography, studying urban economics, which a lot of coursework in zoning and growth control techniques on. And I worked for the Salem Planning Department for 14 years. So I have some knowledge of zoning. I wouldn't call myself an expert, but more knowledge than the average person, I'd say.
Okay, let's follow up on that, because
Yeah.
I have two questions on zoning. One that's near and dear to everybody's heart today, and one that's more near and dear to my heart. And the first one is very basic. We're about to embark on a zoning adventure by the rezoning of the footprint, 40 acres and a mule up there on Ford Ave.
Yep.
Regardless of what we think the mayor wants, or other people, or what the mayor actually wants, or what footprint has put forward, what does Steve Dibble want to see up there on those 40 acres?
Well, I'll bring up what the mayor has proposed through the planning department, and had one of our staff planners lobbying it. Instead of working on offshore wind turbines for the last 3 years, he's been squashed quite a bit. And the planning department has been pushing for a small village, actually a very large village. It's the size of the whole downtown, from the train station to Pickering Wharf. The whole downtown could fit over in the vacant property where the oil tanks and the coal piles used to be. It's 43 acres of land or so there, 42, 43 acres, depending on which way you want to add up the acreage. But the mayor wants to put a very large village of luxury apartments and some luxury condos. It makes no sense. Little Derby Street, Little Webb Street coming down there, they can't handle that type of traffic, nor should we load up the whole city and overcrowd the city so that would help people from greater Boston to keep moving to Salem. I welcome these people to move to Salem. I'm not from Salem. I moved here when I was 18 years old, and my wife and I decided to stay and raise our family here. I love Salem. I love the people. I love the history, the architecture. Let's don't overcrowd the whole city with luxury apartments that are not helping anybody from Salem. We need We need senior housing in Salem. We need truly affordable housing in Salem. We don't need luxury apartments in Salem. You know, it's just hurting Salem tremendously. To build, I don't know, 4,000, 8,000, you know, I've heard different numbers on that one property alone at the power plant. It's ludicrous. The same thing's happening at Shetland, 1,425 units in phase 1. And that of luxury apartments on Shetland. That's our Centennial Park. That's our Cummings Center in Beverly. It's a very small business area. That should be all higher paying job businesses. We have a lot, and I've met with 10 businesses down there now that are being kind of forced out of there now. They, one person had 30 parking spaces and they now have 3. How can they do a business this way? The customers have no place to park. And several businesses have had their rent raised 60%. Again, they're not being evicted, but they're being forced out to make way for the future luxury apartments. 1,425 luxury apartments in Shetland. Where's all that traffic going to go? Spill out into Congress Street and Palmer Street to try to get out of the Point neighborhood? And if it falls like any of the other luxury apartments that we're building all around the city, 99% of the people there are not going to be coming from Salem because they're going to be expensive. It's not just those 2 properties, it's all over the whole city. On Highland Avenue, down on Franklin Street, on Mason Street, on Bridge Street, all over. In fact, Bridge Street Neck, the mayor 2.5 years ago proposed to change the zoning on Bridge Street Neck from the downtown to the Beverly-Salem Bridge. Now that whole neighborhood has been coming back over the years since the bypass road was built. And that's a nice, you drive down the street and you see, you know, mom and dad's pushing baby carriages, and the whole neighborhood's coming back. The houses are all being restored. It's becoming a really nice neighborhood again. Well, picture changing the zoning on that whole corridor to make it look like Rantoul Street in Beverly. Not that there's anything wrong with Rantoul Street, but it doesn't belong over here in Salem in that neighborhood. Having that street lined with 6-story concrete buildings, that would just ruin the whole feel of the whole neighborhood. Let the neighborhood keep coming back. Mom and pop stores are popping up. It's becoming a really, really nice neighborhood on Bridge Street. And if you remember how it looked 20 and 30 years ago, it was not that nice looking. Now it's, you know, those neighbors are doing a great job. Let them keep on doing it.
You segued exactly right into my second question, which was about the Bridge Street zoning, which is actually quite a hodgepodge of categories. It's a very colorful zoning map that runs along Bridge. But let's return to the power plant just for a moment again. Is there something specific other than housing that you'd like to see there?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is easy. If people have looked at a video that I put out on my Facebook site and my website, and some 9,300 Salem families have looked at this one short video. It's 4 minutes long. And one of the mayor's supporters said, "Steve, this is crazy. Prove it." So I listed quite a few of the developments on there that make up the thousands and thousands of units that the mayor wants to build. And I gave the addresses and locations of them. But at the power plant, that's our last deep water port area. That's our heritage. That's Salem's history. If we put housing down, once you build something that's housing, you're never going to be able to change it to anything else. It's just the way it is. Unless you take eminent domain, that doesn't happen today if you wanted to build a highway or something. But so once that portion of the power plant property becomes housing, if the mayor has her way, all future uses to that property can't happen. So the deep water port. So what should go in there is higher paying jobs. What do I mean by that? I mean, you can put down marine research, marine occupation, marine related uses down there. You can have commercial fishermen there, which all the commercial fishermen in Salem have been forced out of Salem. Well, we can bring them back pretty easily. And that would be a nice place for tour boats and other places to come in and see actual fishing boats here in Salem. But the big one is, because we have the power plant here, would be offshore wind turbines. I'm a huge environmentalist, Bill. I don't know if you know, but I was one of the first houses in Salem to have solar panels on my roof. And I started the recycling program here in Salem a long time ago for Mayor Harrington. Actually, Mayor Salvo started at the end of his term, and then Mayor Harrington asked me to get it done. They trusted me. So across the board, I'm a huge environmentalist. We have an oil furnace in our basement that we hardly ever use because we put mini split units in the whole house that are electric. So 99.9% of the power that we use is electric in our house. So the power plant, we should be looking at offshore wind turbines, which will be so far out to sea that you won't see them from the shore, 8 to 20 miles offshore. My oldest son is a merchant marine ship captain. Actually, all three of my sons graduated from Salem High School, and they're all doing well. My youngest son is 29. The older guys are in their 30. But my oldest son is a merchant marine. He's an offshore supply boat. He was servicing oil rigs for many, many years. Now he's been exploring the eastern seaboard for offshore wind turbines from Virginia up to New York and then over to almost to Martha's Vineyard. And they're taking samples of the soil along to determine what type of footings are needed for these offshore turbines. And he said, Dad, tell the people of Salem, you're never going to be able to see these offshore wind turbines from the shore because they're so far out to sea that you just can't see them. And that's going to develop clean, inexpensive, less expensive electricity for everybody here in Salem and everybody on the North Shore. Well, let's do this. Let's stop burning fossil fuels and slow down the burning of fossil fuels and build these wind turbines. Right now, all the study and all the research is going from the eastern seaboard, from New York City down to Virginia, where there's a lot more people, up almost to Boston, but not quite. And then once that research is done and they start locating and building these offshore wind turbines, then they'll be focusing up here in Salem and up through Maine, and then further south down to Florida, and maybe on the West Coast as well. But the wind here in this region is tremendous, Bill. We have a tremendous opportunity to do this. I've been going to gas leaks meetings for some 5 years now, and the natural gas is one of the biggest causes of climate change. We need to get away from that. So offshore wind turbines, have the wires come over, be plugged right into the power plant, and then we're going to have less expensive, our electric bills will go down here in Salem as a result if the contracts are worked out properly. So offshore wind turbines. There are several marine contractors that are looking for a home. They could go in the land in between the SESD, the treatment plant, the sewage treatment plant, and then where the power plant is now, and the rest of the portion of the land can go for marine research, offshore wind turbines, commercial fishermen. You could have many different entities down there, all marine related. So the zoning of that should not change. It should stay our deep water port, and it should stay commercial, industrial. So we have huge taxes coming from there. Once we turn it to housing, luxury apartments, our ocean history is going to be, our ocean history will always be there, but going forward, we're not going to have new history on the ocean because we just killed off our deep water port. That can't happen. Offshore wind turbines will be phenomenal for Salem.
Alrighty, so let's kind of segue away from that and walk into what was originally going to be question 2, and I'll rephrase it a little bit, based partially on what we've talked about so far. This country, the state, the city, we've been compromised politically. There's a huge divide. One of the most important jobs of a mayor is to be able to work with the city council, and we've already touched on that. You've certainly touched on that. Our last 3 mayors, Neil, Stan, and Kim Driscoll, were all city councilors before they became mayor. And they all spoke in their campaigns back in the day about working, being a city councilor, being able to work with city councilors that they've worked with before and that they've known, and that they expected to have good relations with the councils. And all of them had issues with the councils to varying levels. Neil certainly did, Stanley certainly did, and Kim has had those issues. How are you going to deal with the city council if you win that seat? What are you going to do differently than anybody else has done to try to get along with 11 individuals whose job is to act as a group but can't always do that?
Yeah, this will be pretty easy because I'll be working for the people of Salem, and the things that I'll be recommending and bringing forward to the City Council, I'll explain it in great detail. I'll answer their questions. I'll work together with them. I'll be open-minded and transparent. When the mayor says that, a red flag goes up, and it's anything but open and transparent. She uses that word to hide when she's not being open and transparent. I will be open. You'll see that I'll be able to put something forward, and it will be meant to help the people of Salem. And if there's a mistake or something wrong with it, or the councilors have better ideas on it, I'm willing to change that around and reshape it. But the research, I'm very, very good at doing research and very good at putting something forward that makes sense. Well, you mentioned the previous mayors. Mayor Tony Salvo hired me out of college, and he trusted me. I'm very thankful. But after about 2 months or so of calling him Mayor Salvo, he said, "Steve, just stop it. Just call me Tony." So in his honor, I'm asking everybody to just call me Steve. As a city councilor, it's please Steve. Same thing with Joe O'Keefe. When Joe...
I'm just going to stop you. You're stuck with Councillor Dibble forever.
No.
You are, because people still call me Councillor.
No.
And they explain it to me that it's a title for life. So you're going to have to live with it.
Folks that are listening out there, please just call me Steve. That's what everybody has called me. Bill, you can call me whatever. I'll call you Councillor too.
Yes, Councillor.
You're a former councillor. So I have the unique ability to really bring people together and find common sense and common ground on just about everything. And I really look forward to working with the City Council. They will be a partner in this. I will not buy them. I will not force them to vote a certain way. You're going to see a different approach. You're going to see more of an approach like Tony Salvo had. And Tony was not on the City Council when he was elected. He was a typing teacher. And he's a super nice guy. Everybody loved Tony.
And he was a police officer for a short period of time.
That's right, before that, yes. You're right. And he still has quite a few family members here in Salem. One of them is, just retired, a police officer.
That was a nephew, I think.
Yes, nephew. Yep, good friend, good guy. So Tony had the ability to bring in very good department heads, and he allowed them all to do the job. And then Neil Harrington did the same thing. And Neil became a good friend. He put me on his cabinet, or his, what they called a development team meeting. I was the only non-department head that met with everybody. And then Stan Yusevich came in, and after the election, he called and said, I want to make sure you stay. And he put me on his cabinet right away. And these three gentlemen were phenomenal. In fact, Mayor Levesque before that did not work with Mayor Levesque. Another good guy who I later, after I was working for the city, I became friends with as well. But I said earlier, I've been friends with Kim Driscoll for 35 years. She came to my wedding 32 years ago, on and on. I worked really hard on her committee, probably harder than most anybody else. A few people worked, well, I was very instrumental in helping her to get elected. She was probably going to get elected, but we put her over the top. And now, 16 years later, I'm questioning that effort that I put in, because she's changed. Bill, she's not the same person I knew 30 years ago. She's really not.
Well, let me ask you a question there that's been on my mind, having nothing to do with the current mayor. We've had the 4-year term since Kim's first
Only
term.
this mayor.
Yeah, and
every other mayor we've been discussing, they were 2-year terms each.
So the 4-year term clearly gives, well, we're a Plan B government, but the 4-year term clearly gives the mayor an advantage. Now, Plan B was meant initially to have the council and the mayor on an even keel.
Yeah.
The 4-year term has clearly given the mayor a bit of an advantage. I've long been of the opinion that it's time for us to change city council terms. I don't think we necessarily need to go 4 years. I'd like to see 3-year terms with the at-large and the ward councilors running in different years like the school committee does. Because I think that would give the city council a little bit, they would be at less of a disadvantage. Are you happy with the 4-year term? How do you feel about extending council terms?
No, I think, well, when I'm mayor next year, if I'm lucky enough to get elected, and I'm putting my message out there, I have a tremendous amount of support throughout the whole city, Bill. I'm going to open the charter, and we're going to set term limits of, I think it should be 8 years, but if people, the mass majority say it should be 10 years, that's okay.
But still with 2-year terms?
And switch it back to 2 years terms.
Oh, for the mayor also?
For the mayor should go back to 2 years. This idea of 3 years for the at-large councilors might work.
No, at-large and ward, but alternating election years, like the school committee does.
Yep. I think that would be good, because the school committee has the ability to have uniformity as they're going. So it's only half, and then the other half, then the other half. The whole school committee can't be wiped out all in 1 year. Some people say that it should be all wiped out. We should. I'm hearing a lot of things on the street to clean house, and that's not my style. There's a lot of good people that are on city boards and commissions. There's a lot of good people that are elected officials. I'll work with everybody, and people already realize that. They've realized it for decades. I've been volunteering in Salem for 40 years on all sorts of things.
So opening the city charter, of course, is a process.
Yes.
First, you have to get the voters to agree to open it.
Yeah.
Then you have to elect the charter commission.
That's right.
If I remember the charter commission ballot, it was 26 or 28 people. I think it was I don't know if it was a 15-person commission. It was a pretty big commission. But you have to open up the charter first, then you have to have an election. I think you can have the election in the same year. I'm not quite sure. But you're talking about a process that may take an entire mayoral term.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's important. It should happen. We should have term limits. You know, all the previous mayors that we just discussed, it was 10 years, 6 years, 8 years, and 8 years. This mayor, 16 years. And she wants to be 20 years, maybe longer.
That would tie
It'd be all-time record in Salem.
It would be Ty Collins.
Yes.
Collins served 49 to 69.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. 20 years. So she'll be tied for the longest-serving mayor in the history of Salem. It's too much. The 2-year terms kept the previous mayors very honest. They're honest people to begin with, but I think it helped them to keep working on behalf of Salem residents, to fix sidewalks, to fix other things, to make sure the schools are doing well. And the schools were doing great under those previous mayors. We were not the best. You know, we weren't a Lexington or Brookline or Winchester, on and on, but we were pretty good for a city of our size. And now the schools were down in our, well, it depends which state agency you talk to, either the bottom 7% or the bottom 12% of the state of Massachusetts now in schools. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable for Salem. We can do so much better for our children, and starting next year we will.
So just to touch again on the 4-year term now,
Yes.
Sam Zoll, of course, was a big fan of the 2-year term. He thought it was good for a mayor to have to get off his butt and
Absolutely.
walk the streets and knock on doors and get out and talk to the voters. But Tony Salvo, who you consider somewhat of a mentor by the sound of it, he worked very closely with Kim on her initial campaign, and he was a proponent of the 4-year mayor.
Yep.
So you know that can go both ways.
You know, I thought the 4-year was going to do well as well. I thought it was going to be a good thing because I saw how the mayors had to keep on working. You know, they'd work for a year, and then it would be an election year. Then work for a year, then election year. So they're always running for re-election almost to some degree. Not totally, but a lot more than 4 years. But the 4 years, I think, has really backfired. I don't know if it's with this person or the 4 years helped create and change Kim Driscoll, but it's certainly not working at all. We really need to have term limits, and we should go back to the 2 years. I'm flexible a little bit on the 2 years. We have a discussion on this, but the term limits, we need to implement them because, you know, I'm promising a pledge right here in front of you, and I've already made this pledge. It's going to be 1 or 2 terms, 8 years maximum. If we change it back to a 2-year term, then it's going to be 8 years maximum for Steve Dibble as mayor of Salem. That's long enough for anybody, You know, before that need for power sets in, and I don't think being mayor was going to change me. I'm still going to be the same person I've been for my whole life, working with people, you know, helping people. It's who I am. It's in my nature. But 8 years of service, I think, is long enough for anybody.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's just about enough today. We've gone almost 35 minutes. You got any final words you want to throw out there?
Listen, I can't do this without your help. On September 14th, please consider Steve Dibble for mayor of Salem. That's the primary, and then November 2nd is the finals. But in the meantime, please take a look at my website, stevedibble4mayor.org. Or just Google Steve Dibble.
We'll put all of that stuff up on the screen.
Well, thank you, Bill. Thank you for doing that.
No worries. Yeah.
But thank you. It's been a privilege to be here with you, Bill. It's a privilege to speak before the people of Salem, and it'll be a privilege next year to serve you, the people of Salem.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
My pleasure. And that's it. This is Bill, Salem Digest at SATV, our 2021 preliminary election interviews. September 14th, I believe, is the date. So thanks a lot, guys. We'll talk to you later.